Welcome everybody to our third Knife Makers Corner. Today we're coming from Ballard in Seattle from Firehorse Forge with David Tuthill. He's going to be showing you a couple of different methods of forge welding.
So my title for tonight's demonstration here is Zero Flux Given. We're going to talk about a couple different things. So the billet I'm starting out with is just a real small billet like this. I just threw this together, tacked, I think it's 14 layers. I've got 7 layers of 1080 and 6 layers of 15N20 that are in between, and just tacked together like this, and just a few little tacks on the sides here just to keep it from buckling. When I first learned how to make Damascus, it was at a conference in Montana a long time ago, and he used recycled bandsaw blades and pallet banding material. And so I started making little billets that were about 1 inch wide by about maybe 1.5 inches tall and 6 inches long. And I was setting them all by hand on my anvil. And just kind of dinking around. And when I look back, I still have a couple of those pieces, but I was super stoked about them, and for good reason, because it was fun and I was learning new stuff. But they were, I'll just say that my standards have gone up a little since then. That being said, it was a couple of years after I learned to do that an old shopmate of mine, Japheth Howard, suggested that rather than trying to set them always by hand, that I use Post Vise, which normally I'm just going to say, if you use a Post Vise or a bench vise or whatever, because I'm going to show you just a little different way, it's not rocket surgery, as Bart would say. It's better to have your vise bolted to the floor. This one's not. It's got a pretty heavy base, but it can move a little bit. It's not really going to impede your ability to do a weld, but it's helpful to have a solid vise. And so, and if I'm jumping around a bit and I skip something, please excuse me. Just, if you have a question that you feel like I left something out, just let me know. But let's come over here for a quick second. And so there's a number of reasons that I'm doing fluxless welding. One is probably one of the biggest reasons is, two main reasons. One, it eats your forge up. It eats up the bottom of your forge. We've all dealt with that if you've ever tried forge welding and you flux it. And even if you don't use a ton of flux, it has a tendency to, melt the bottom of your forge like water on cotton candy. So that's annoying. Replacing the bottom of your forge is sometimes a real pain. So what I use, just on a quick side note, is broken up fire brick on the bottom of my forge, and I've been doing that for about 20 years. And it really makes your forge last a lot longer. It's so easy to replace the bottom of your forge. So the other thing is, though, and I'm sure we've all dealt with this, even if you're just doing, ornamental work, which is so with ornamental work, I don't think I could probably pull off this fluxless weld. If I was using a coke forge, I could probably do that, or even coal. But with a gas forge, if you're doing branches for, you're putting branches and leaves on a stock, or maybe you're making shackles or chains or whatever, I would probably have to flux for that. Likewise, if I was going to do cable Damascus, I would definitely be fluxing. But for doing stacked billets and even mosaics, it's certainly easy to do it all without any flux. And one of the people who really helped me kind of get over my fears with that was John Emmerling. And I don't know if he's going to attend tonight. It'd be great if he did. But I went down to John's and we made some feather Damascus, and we did all of it without any flux. And it really opened my eyes a bit. And if I remember correctly, I think 2213 degrees is like the optimal forge welding heat. And he's got a thermocouple and a pyrometer on his forge, so he's constantly monitoring it. But I go by color. I've always gone by color, and it's so far always been correct for me. Um, so so what I do, and if I'm jumping forward again, please excuse me. What I do is you can see that I've got them set in front of my door, these two billets. And one's just like the one I showed you a minute ago. You can see it's just getting up to this nice orangey heat. And I flip it around frequently. And what this does, and in addition to these two little tack welds, is it allows the core of your billet to come up to heat at the same rate that the outside of your billet does effectively. You can see there's a cold spot and a hot spot, but I flip it frequently, okay? And I've found that where I've had problems have usually been in relation to the outer layers getting hot faster than the core. I think that's where most of us have had that problem. And so, or you have something really dirty. So by letting it heat up slowly outside in like your preheat zone, it gets that core hot so that when you put it in to get your first welding heat, I before I bring it up to welding heat, I get the whole thing to about 1500 degrees and just kind of squeeze it all together to make it a bit more homogeneous. And then I throw it in and I let it come up to temperature. And then I go for my first welding heat. And on that first welding heat, I just reduce it by maybe 1/8 of an inch. And then I stick it in there and really let it soak. And so I'm pretty diligent about my process, and I've had very good results doing that. And as far as stacked Damascus goes, and mosaics, with the exception of some canister stuff I've played around with, I haven't had any problems at all. But canister is, of course, a whole different thing. So yeah, knock on wood. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to keep this guy rotating, and I'll show you. This is a mosaic piece that I'm working on. I thought I'd throw that in the mix as well, and I'll show you that in a minute. But first, I'm going to go ahead and the other thing I like to do is right before jumping in is I'll just kind of stick it in there and roll it around a little bit. I don't know, why don't you come and get a view from over there? Okay, you can see those layers coming up. You can see that the outer layers right there on the bottom want to come up a lot faster than the rest. And this is why I do the preheat. Now, hopefully.
I had a question from Paul Wagner when you get a chance about what you do to prep the surfaces of your steel before tacking them up.
Just, I just, as they come to me, I just go ahead and stack them up. I don't clean them or anything. Now if it was oily, and if there was like some heavy rust, I'd probably go ahead and clean it. But I've actually experimented and used bars that have some light rust on them, even a little bit of oil, that not like heavy oil, but I've just gone ahead and stacked it up, and I've even seen little micro gaps in it, and they've all worked. I've tested it and seen it, and it's all been working. John Emmerling, I've seen what he uses. He's got these spools of 1095 that he uses. I mean, they're massive. They must weigh like 500 pounds or something, that he got somewhere. And that shit's rusty. And he just throws it in there. And he's had no problems with delams or anything, or contaminated welds or inclusions. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and get a little heat on that. Just going to give it just a little kiss there. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and throw it in the forge, let it come up to temp. So John's whole theory is that once it gets up to that 2213, I'm saying that number because that's what sticks to me in my mind. His whole theory is that once it gets to that temperature, all that dissolves. All that stuff dissolves, and that it's not a problem. And
Like
I
it all
don't
goes
know,
back into solution, kind of.
essentially, and it gets forged out. Now, I've also, I was talking to Jorgen years ago. I was doing a bunch of sculptural pieces back when I had my shop with Steve Howell on Ballard Avenue. And I had this thing, because we had his 3B, it was about 8 inches tall, and it was all these different layers of wrought iron and what did I have? Some bearings in there, or like not bearings, gears. I had gears in there and wrought iron and a bunch of other stuff I was making a sculptural piece with. And I kept fluxing it, you know. And Jorgen was talking about how he had seen a demo from this British guy that was using coke, and he said it was either an Urbana conference or some Midwestern conference. And this British guy took like timing chains and a bunch of like greasy auto parts. I don't know what they were, and he like wired them all together or some crazy thing, and just brought it up to a white heat with no flux at all in a coke forge, which is a totally different animal. But it was a white heat, and he forge welded the whole thing. And I think I don't remember what he did with it. But, you know, just to show that it could be done. Now, of course, that's different than what we're talking about with Damascus, because I'm sure that was full of inclusions, but maybe not. Maybe in an industrial setting, if you had some closed die forging you were going to do with it or something, or you could put it into some squaring dies, you might be able to forge it out and it comes out clean. I don't know. Everybody says that that's not the case, but, you know, with this, at least, which is a much simpler thing than what I just described, I think we're going to be, well, I know that we're going to be just fine. So, all right. And excuse me if I'm bouncing around all over the place. That's just sort of me. So.
Yeah, and I imagine that the coke and coal forges, I mean, those are going to generate a lot less scale than these gas forges as well, correct?
Yeah, so, and that is, again, part of the reason that I don't like to use flux, because of the slag. It's like it goes from scale to being full on slag. And it just, sometimes it'll get trapped under a die or something, and it'll put this big crater in the space of your billet, and, you know, it just, things can happen. So this one I'm doing under the press, okay? And this guy, obviously. So I'm just gonna go ahead and all right. So I just did a little light weld on that, and everything looks good. I'm confident that that's fine. And then the next thing I do is I come over here and get rid of those welds, so I don't have to. I hate using angle grinders in my shop, and I only do it if I absolutely have to. So one of the nice things about this, being a blacksmith, I think like a blacksmith. So I get out my rasp, take take those beads right off of there, and they're tacks. They're not really beads, but yeah, I just hogs that tack weld right off.
Yeah, a lot faster than an angle grinder too.
Oh, way faster, and it's quiet.
And right now, when everybody's trying to take it easy on their lungs anyway, that's probably definitely the best way to do it.
Exactly. There it is. Now it's ready. If you want to do W's or whatever at this point, you know, again, this is just a small billet to show you, just knocking some scale off there, but so it looks pretty clean, you know, nothing to worry about there.
Looks like it'll weld up real nice.
So I'll just go ahead and I'm going to draw this out into some square bar once I get moving on it.
So, Dave, if I can jump in and ask you a question, I noticed that you put the 1080 on the outside. Is that any reason for that, or is that just how you do it? Because I normally put the 15 and 20 on the outside.
I always put the 1080 on the outside because it's thicker. Not much thicker, but it's a bit thicker. I think I use 0.095 for my 15 and 20. The stuff I get is, I believe, 0.095. and then it's 0.125 is my 1080. So it's a little bit thicker. It's just what I always do. And I don't know that there's really any advantage to it other than that. And I mean, you know, again, you know, and I only do this on a full moon, so these might not work tonight. Let's see.
One of the things that Lish told me when he was teaching me as well is that if you put your carbon on the outside and not your nickel, then when you go to restack, you've got carbon to carbon for the restack, and it's a lot easier to get those to weld than going, you know, nickel to carbon or nickel to nickel.
Well, that makes sense, I guess. You know, I didn't think of that. But yeah, now that you mention it, it seems like that would be true.
But I mean, if you're at 2213, like you said, then it, you know, your chances of getting anything to stick together should be pretty good.
That's what I think. I mean, I don't know how well this can pick it up, but maybe we could zoom in there and see. You can get close and try to. I don't know.
It's pretty white hot. We can't see a whole lot of anything.
Yeah,
in there.
no, it's really hot in there. I should be wearing my didymium glasses for this, but I normally, that's, by the way, I highly recommend investing in a good pair of didymium glasses. All the lamp workers wear them, all the glass blowers wear them, and they're just staring into a fire way more than any of us are going to, unless you're doing this all day long. But man, soda flare is a real thing, and it can, I don't know how many of you have ever spent time forge welding or staring into a hot forge. I've spent, you know, an entire day at this heat looking into the forge, and that stuff's bad for your eyes, you know. But I'm not doing that much, so I'm not wearing them right now. But
blacksmithing pretty much wrecks your body in every way you can imagine.
So many ways.
Your lungs, your joints, your eyes, all of your ears, all of it. Wear that PPE, folks.
I must be doing a really good job if nobody's got questions.
Yeah, any questions from the audience?
I'm going to go ahead and do my next weld. This might get you a little.
And I noticed that you've got flat dies in that hydraulic press right now. Do you stick with those throughout the process, or will you switch it up?
Through most of it. Sometimes I'll throw my drawing dies on there just to move things a little more quickly. That's where I'm going to stop on this for right now. I don't feel like there's, unless you guys, does anybody want to see me take this further?
You do you, boo.
All right. So
we had a question from.
This is one I did earlier. Oh, I just wanted to show you up close, you know, what it looks like after rasping. This is the first weld that's set on this.
That's that one you just rasped?
No, this is, I did one earlier just so I could show you without burning my hands off.
Yeah, I was going to say that I had to cool down pretty fast for you to be able to hold it right now.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea how to spell that didymium for people looking for it? Is it a D-Y or a D-I? Or
D-I-D-I.
I got it in the chat.
Oh, Billy's got it. He's all over it. Thank you, Billy.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah. So, all right. So now, well, that one's preheating. What I'm going to do is get this little guy. So I'm going to show you, this is a part, I've got this concept I'm working on right now, this piece that I've been building all these pieces for to see if it's going to work. But anyway, you'll notice, so there are 9 pieces, and they're done in like a basket weave type of a layout. I TIG welded the ends, and then I just TIG welded the outer inch of each. Okay. So obviously, when you're doing mosaics, you're not going to be fluxing anyway, because at that point you've probably completely sealed up your billet. But what I'm going to do, and I think that'll fit. I guess I could measure it real quick. Maybe I should do that. I may just use my squaring dies to set the weld on this. Anyway, I want distortion. They're not perfect squares, because I had my helper grind it for me, and he didn't perfectly follow my instructions. So
blame it on the helper. I see.
That's it. It's not me. No.
As someone who's been that helper, I can attest that it usually is our fault.
Yeah, no, it's all right. He did the best he could. You know, he did a good job. So even though that's now warmed up, okay, so it's all been warmed. I'm just gonna throw the whole thing in there. I'm not doing the kiss. Okay?
Dave Lish agrees. He says it's always the helper's fault.
Yeah, there you go.
And Glenn Gilmore's asking, how many times do you cut and stack after drawing out the billet?
It depends on what I'm doing. If I'm making W's, I'll take that first billet and I'll turn it into, you know, C's, and then I will do it a couple. It depends if I want like a lower layer count, something a lot bolder, or if I want a higher layer count, or if those pieces are going to get cut up and made into part of something else. I did a pattern recently that I call my mountain Sky Damascus, and there's a quadrant that's made out of biased crushed W's, and it came out a little tighter than I had originally wanted it to, but it looks good. I'm happy with it. So, but you know, in my notes that I took, and I always take notes, I actually, sorry, there's a little thing hung up on here, and I don't have my normal scraper. I don't know where it is. Anyway, see now, that's from Flux right there, because I was putting some cable in there. That dirty cable. Anyway, oh yeah, so I have a custom fit on these. So yeah, I'm sorry if that seems like an ambiguous answer. So these guys are super tight. I just readjusted my guides, so I'd have to loosen these if I really wanted to. But
nothing you can't fix with a hammer, right?
that's right. That's why I'm not. This is exactly why I don't work in the tech industry.
Yeah, I don't know if you'd be able to do that to a line of code.
To a line of what?
Of programming code.
Oh, I thought you said something else. All right. Okay. All right. Is it noisy when I have that thing on? Can you guys
No,
hear
it actually
okay?
sounds really good. It's
Okay,
pretty quiet.
Cool. All right. So you can see this guy's coming up nice and slow. And, you know, I just got tired of getting flux all over my forge and all over my anvil. And, you know, it gets right here in the hearth, and you go to do something. Maybe you're forging a knife and you got this glob of flux from when you were welding, and it lays in there. And, you know, I know some people, Dave, I think you've got your own, like a specific forge that's just for welding, right? Am I right about that? I think some people do that. And, you know, not every shop can do 2 or 3 forges. You know, they have one
Dave,
forge.
we have one flux-free forge.
Okay. Yeah, and for good reason, because you don't want what happens to that forge happening to your other forges.
Exactly. And Andrea gets mad if she gets flux on her parts.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah. So I just really kind of, okay, I got a good heat on that other one, so I'm gonna move this guy out of the way and grab these. All right. Mr. Grabby.
Mhm.
You can see it's kind of flashing out on the edges there. I'm not worried about that. All right, so I'm gonna call that good for that weld. And then I'll go to my flat dies for this. So what I just did, and you can see, if we look at the end, you can see that pattern.
Still pretty hot. You might have to wait for it to cool a little bit.
It's not coming through on, is it coming through on? No, yeah. Yeah, so it's, let's see, I'll brush it off on the end and let's see if that cools it down a little. While it's doing that, I will reposition this guy. So this project, that little square billet that I'm working on, I'm really excited about this. I wish I could say something, but I'm really excited. It's something I've been working on for a few months, and I just really haven't had the time to put into it that I would like. But you know, time management has never been my strong point.
Well, I know you do a lot of pushing of the envelope and kind of pattern development and trying new things and stuff, but do you have a like a go-to pattern that you just like, that's kind of your favorite to do?
I'm really enjoying this whole thing that my Mountain Sky is based on, and I also have one that I call the Sea Storm Damascus. You know, I love, you know, the outdoors and the elements, and if I can, you know, if something reminds me of that, I'm, you know, more than happy to put the name in there somehow. I don't know. That sounds probably pretty dorky, but you know, what are you gonna do? So basically, I like taking quadrants and doing interesting things with them and manipulating those patterns. As far as favorite goes, I mean, I love that. I love feathers. I love. There's a lot, I think, of potential waiting to happen with basket weaves, and you know, there's so much that can be done with jelly rolls too. You know, but those are time consuming. Jelly rolls they're tricky and they're time consuming, but they're fun, and you can do some really cool stuff. I don't know how many of you follow Joshua Prince, but he's been doing some really neat stuff with jelly rolls lately.
He's one of my favorites, man.
For
His
the
skill
last,
is out of control.
yeah, for like the last year, really, I feel like I've seen him doing a lot more with jelly roll stuff. And of course, Salem has done some really cool stuff with him as well. He's done all kinds of crazy stuff, but I don't know. They're all my favorites. You know what is my favorite? The one that requires the least amount of grinding. That'll always be my favorite. I don't like
Cable
spending
Damascus?
time. No, definitely not cable Damascus. You know, I've been playing with it a little bit, and it can be kind of neat, but it's kind of honestly a bit more of a pain than it's worth. There's something, I don't know if this will show up. Let's see. Oh, actually, I wonder if these will show up at all. Boy, I don't think so. I'm going to try to show you guys something here. But these are some billets of some of the stuff I've been playing with while we're waiting for a heat. Yeah, not going to probably come out super well.
Yeah.
What's that?
And Dave, I was just wondering, do you have a website or anything where we could see where people could see examples of your mountains?
Instagram. You could go to Instagram. I'm not very good about maintaining my website, but my website is firehorseforge.co.
And Glenn Gilmore had mentioned earlier that he had the pleasure of being able to take a Damascus class with you, and was highly recommending your classes to people looking to get into this. Is that something that you're able to offer right now? Or
I am offering them right now, and I'll talk about that a little bit. I've been taking precautions, you know, to keep everybody safe, myself included, and we'll get into that in just a second. But I just want to show you real quick before I take this next heat. This is a piece of that Golden Gate Bridge cable. Can you see that? Is it coming out?
Oh, yeah.
And so that's, you know, started out as about a 3-inch diameter cable. And Dave played with some of this stuff too, and he will attest that it is some dirty, funky stuff. But man, if you can forge it down, you can get some really neat stuff to happen. And then this one here, so that's a cross section of that cable with backfilled with nickel. And then I put it in another canister and surrounded it with motorcycle chain, and then backfilled it with 1095. And so I'm kind of playing with some stuff with that. But you can see this little inclusion back here. And there's some little funky things that happen.
You think that inclusion runs all the way through?
It's been coming through, yeah. I wish you guys could see these better. These are some pretty neat patterns I've been playing with.
We can see that houndstooth on the bottom.
Yeah, so the houndstooth one is the Ocean Storm, and then this one is the Mountain Sky. And so the whole toothy part of it down there is all crushed W's, and then the whole sky in this one is crushed W's. So it's kind of fun stuff. I'm going to take this heat. Oh, never mind. I'm not going to take the heat because I got to change my dies. Wait, if you thought my insertion process was exciting, this is how I get them out. So,
well, at least you know they're not going to move around on you in there.
Yeah, I like that about it, actually. This takes a second. Maybe not the most refined, but it works. It's a little slippery with all that grease in there. There we go. Come on. There we go.
Lish is saying he loves that mountain sky pattern. And yeah, for folks who want to see that on a blade, I believe Tuthill finished up a knife with that. What was that? Not too long ago. And it should be up on his Instagram if you want to see what that pattern looks like all finished out in a blade. It is gorgeous.
Yeah, there's a wah-handled Goto that's at Blade Gallery right now. That's made out of that. It's an 8-inch, and but I'm working on a couple of integrals that have that as well. I forged some integrals a while back, but I just haven't finished them. Okay, go ahead and get this. A good preheat on this guy. Yeah. All right. I'm going to go ahead and just so this bar will ultimately get drawn out to about a 3/4 inch square before I take it to the next step. But that's where I'm going to stop with it for now because I know we only have so much time. And so I always love, I actually do have a fondness for basket weaves. I like, and explosions are another one. They're like such kind of old school, time-tested patterns, but they're so cool. They're just cool and simple, and they look good when you pull them off. It's done well.
So
I mean,
David,
there's probably a couple of patterns here and there that people are coming up with that haven't been done, but I gotta think that for as long as Damascus has been made, at a certain point in time, it's like the old adage of, there's never any new songs. Every song's already been written. It's got to be a little bit like that, where, there's been so many people making this stuff for so long that it's got to be pretty hard to come up with something that's never been done by humans before.
I don't think so. I think it's like clay. I mean, to a degree, I think you're right. But I think with mosaics, if you were to combine like mosaics and canisters and, stacking and do all these different things and combine them, or even just work within those parameters, I think there's so many things that can still be done. And maybe you're right. Maybe they all have been done, but I still think there's some stuff out there that we haven't seen yet. What's that?
You know what I didn't think about either before I opened my mouth about that was the fact that technology's probably changed so much that there's things that we can do now that just weren't probably possible with grinders and surface grinders and TIG welders and all this stuff, just makes it able to do stuff that you couldn't do before.
Absolutely. What do you think, Dave?
Well, Dave put in the chat that we'll never see an end to what's possible with patterns. So that's in the chat. And Glenn Gilmore had a question. How much radius do you have on your flat dies?
On the edges, well, there's the radius by action that was, just something that's happened as a result of using it. These are just mild steel. So the radius changes from time to time, but basically, I originally ground in about 3/16 radius all the way around. And then I leave sharp corners at the back for doing shoulders. So, and once I'm tightening up something, because with integrals, you're essentially making like a tenon, And so I've always liked, whenever I've done mortise and tenon work, I like to have a nice sharp corner, whether it's the heel of my anvil and a set hammer, or whether I'm making an integral tang. It's nice to be able to get in there and clean that up. And I do a lot of that just right off the edge of my anvil. But that's like it. So I like to keep that area pretty crisp. But everything forward. So I have 2 pieces of H13, which are exactly that size. And if I get my button gear, I'm going to go ahead and make a set of dies just like this out of H13. And then I'm also going to make a combo drawing die and flat die. And, I've always liked Dave's T-shaped dies. And I think at some point I'll do that. That could be nice because these are 4x6. And if I made like a little T, I'd have to figure it out because of the guide system I use. But I've thought about doing something like that because it's nice to have that long return for straightening things out. But it's like it's one of those things you just get so used to using what you have that you make it work. And I still use a flatter, to get things really flat. I still use a flatter in my anvil. I don't want to get too evolved. I'm still a bit of a Cro-Magnon at heart. So,
Dave's digging your wide dies there.
Oh, thanks, Dave. They're really nice. I have to say, they're handy. These are my drawing dies. I squished them out of I had some S7, I think it was like 3-inch round, and those suckers just work so great. I just squished them into a swage basically, and they came out exactly the way I wanted, and they move metal fast. So let's see. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and set this guy in and now what we're going to do, so what I'll be doing with this billet here is I'm going to go ahead and open the door and start heating that up a little more. And we're going to go over here and I'm going to show you just how to use a post vise. There's a couple different things you can do. Make sure I grab the right one. So if your jaws are pretty parallel, you can start, just get them as close as they can, and you're just going to come in and you're just going to set it. You're just using a screw you're using that mechanical advantage to set your weld. And then you can also come in and do this. You can certainly do something like that. So let's say your jaws aren't, you know, one of the things that Post Vises are well known for is that through decades of use, they get, you know, a little bit out of square, especially they're made out of wrought iron like this set. So they can get a little tweaked. And I've overhauled a number of Post Vises and reforged them and you know, redone screws and stuff. But it's, you know, they still end up getting a little tweaked. So if yours are really tweaked, you can go like this. You can just kind of start like that and then flip it around and, you know, do it in reverse. And then that way it kind of evens them out. And at least that helps you to set your weld. I mean, like when I was in my early 20s, I had no problem picking up a big hammer and just beating the shit out of it until it worked, you know. And you know, had I known what I was doing a little more, I think I could have still had that approach, but had maybe some better results. That fly press right here, I've actually still, well, I think I sold the last ladder Damascus knife that I made on this fly press, where I had made a bunch of billets. They were a bit smaller billets. They're not, so most of my billets now start out at 44 or 45 layers by, you know, 1.5 by 6 inch. And so my billets end up being like 5 inches by 6 inches by 1.5 inches, basically. And I think that's about 12 pounds. And so I couldn't have done a billet like that on this. I suppose I could have, but I would have wanted a bigger one. So I was doing about half that much on here. I was doing like up to 30 layers, I think is the biggest I ever did on the fly press. And I have some rectangular dies that are 6 inches long somewhere under here. But I would just set it up for that and just go for it. I mean, a number 5 is a little underpowered for that, but you could do it with a 6 or an 8 for sure. And you just have, I would usually have a helper. I'd have one of my buddies in here swinging that flywheel for me while I move the piece under it, and it worked great. But this is for smaller billets. You know, if you want to, and if you really want to just try getting some 1 inch wide material instead of 1.5 inches, if you just want to kind of jump in. Okay, so this guy is just about up to 10. I'm going to throw him in, and then I'm going to come out and I'm going to set that weld. Now, this one I got a little hotter than the last one because I've been a little distracted. But and the other thing is I made a bunch of tongs for 3/16 by 1.25 inches, which is what I use for my intro to bladesmithing class. It's you know, the first class I ever took on making a knife was with Adam and Haley over at Dave's shop, and then we did another one. But Dave was had talked to me about that stock size being more manageable, and I can't thank you enough, Dave, because it really is. But I found that it's a really great size to start with, and it actually works out really well in my Damascus classes. I weld a piece of 3/16 by 1.25 inch mild steel as the handle. So now you know the orientation of everything as well, but then you're using the same pair of tongs. So it's kind of nice, because I don't have a ton of space for tools and everything. I have a fairly small shop, even though I'm in a big building. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just go ahead and set it this way real quick. And all I'm doing is really just taking the air out of this thing. And there's not a whole lot in there.
So what's the benefit of doing that versus a hammer on the anvil?
Well, it's more controlled. You're getting a squeeze. So the problem is, if I tried to do this, you could do this with a hammer on the anvil. But if you're just starting out, and even if you're not, it just gives you more even pressure than if you're hammering. There's nothing wrong with it. I've set welds on billets that size with a hammer. I'm just trying to show you different options. I think if you're maybe your hammer skills aren't quite where you want them to be, or maybe you're not as strong. I mean, so here's the thing. You don't want to hit a billet too hard. If you hit it too hard, you can actually blow it apart on your first heat. So really, when you first set a weld, you want to come in you know, forcefully but gently, if that makes sense. So you want it to do something, but you don't want to overdo it. And I think that offers you a bit more control if you're not exactly sure how controlled you're going to be. That's my theory. If anybody would like to chime in on that. What?
Well, I just said that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know. Dave, what do you think? Dave's not here.
Oh, he's here. He might be typing.
Oh. Any other people doing forge welding? I'd love to hear what anybody else is saying.
Dave, can you hear me now?
Yeah, yep. There you are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think that first weld is so many times I've seen guys blow them apart by going down too hard. So on smaller stuff, I always set the first weld with a hand hammer still. I've actually never set a weld with a vise, but hand hammer is how I like to do the smaller stuff, and then gentle with the hydraulic on some stuff. We always do what you did earlier. We always pre-squeeze the billet before we flux it. We still use flux when it's warm to tighten everything up. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but we like what you're doing, man. You're doing a great job, Dave.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Hey, and while I got you on there, can we get the phone number of the guy who cleans and organizes your shop for you? Mm-hmm. It's beautiful. It's amazing. No way, man. Come on, don't give me that, man.
You're not making Leo do that?
Look, do okay. So shoot the whole shop right here. Just kind of show them. Here, come on over here. All right. So starting here, just follow me. All right. This is it. This is my shop. This building isn't my shop, but this right here where I'm pointing. This is what I got right here. Yeah. And then back in there. Now the big room that you saw, I do have some. The guys are very accommodating who own this building, and they allow us all to come in and utilize the space as needed. But this, I've got my mill over here. And then I've got
more space at one point, Dave, because it seems like you got more space than you had when I was there last.
It's just because I've cleaned up a little bit, probably. I don't know. Everything's on wheels. So my surface grinder. I've got this old surface grinder here.
Nice.
I built my own kiln. Got this guy on wheels. So I built my kiln. I built my press, and I built my forge. And I hear a lot of people feeling like they got to go out and spend lots and lots and lots of money on stuff. And honestly, that's probably the smarter way to do it. But I just like to build things. And, if I can figure it out with, by reading and getting help from friends and stuff, then that's more enjoyable for me.
Well, it's looking really good, David. And it's pretty
impressive
what you got going on there, man. And I wish I was that organized. I really do.
Thank you.
Me too.
Thanks, Andrea. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Andrea.
Hi, guys.
All right, I'm going to take my second welding heat now. So I set it in the vise. It's just to show you that it can be done. So maybe your elbow hurts and you don't want to swing your hammer, but you really want to put together a billet and you don't have a press. So it's just I showed you that for somebody who just has an anvil and a vise, if you don't have a press, so that you don't feel like you can't jump into making some Damascus, because you should do that. If you want to make some Damascus, make some Damascus. But start out maybe with inch-wide pieces instead of 1.5 inches. It'll be a little easier to start. And then maybe you're ready to jump in on something bigger. Okay, so here we go. Now I'm going to try getting this little better by... Woo. That's a hot billet. Now, one thing about that flat bar is it's bendy if you're not careful. Looking pretty good. go ahead and get rid of those little bits of weld.
And while you're doing that, Glenn had a question about what type of camera are you using there?
My iPhone. It's is that a 6? I don't even know what is it? Yeah, see, I don't even know what my own phone is. It's an iPhone 6. Yeah. Pretty good camera on there, huh? Glenn, what have you been up to, man? You're making some stuff like this, aren't you? You've been making a lot of presses. Those presses look nice, by the way. Probably a lot better designed than mine.
I don't know. I've been liking that press there.
I love my press. So here, I want to point something out. See, that was 3/16. I guarantee you that's 1/8 of an inch right now, this bar. Because I got that thing rocking hot. Look at, see, there's a sure sign. The lava. So definitely well within welding. Hey, that felt pretty good. Makes me want to take off my vest. I got a wool vest under this here. And I'm feeling it right now.
And Glenn answered your question, said, yeah, thanks. The presses are doing well, but he's still doing a lot of forged architectural stuff.
Oh, excellent. All right, I'm going to take this and just rasp off that last side. And then just for fun, I'm going to see on my last heat, well, my next heat, how far I can draw this out on the press, because I'm feeling pretty good about it. I'm going to start by forging it in the vertical position on my layers. You guys understand what I mean by that? So in the orientation that you're looking at it now, that's how I'm going to go into my dies, and we'll see how well it holds together. Should be fine. There we go. So there's one little booger in there. There, we got it. All right. How are we for time?
We're at 7 o'clock here. You know, we can go a little bit over here. Take your time, do your thing. I think people are still sticking around strong. We're still at a full, I think like 36 attendees right now. So,
okay. All right.
Yeah, people are loving it.
So yeah, just on my next heat, I'm gonna get it hot, and we'll see. You know, I miss having a power hammer. There's a basement below me, so I can't put a power hammer in here. The whole building is made out of concrete, so all the sounds carry through the building pretty well. I guess I must have a likable personality, because there haven't been any torches or pitchforks yet. So
Can you talk a little bit about why you'd love to have a power hammer again for drawing this stuff out, and how the hammer and the press move the steel differently?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a number of reasons. One, a hammer is way faster, way faster, and I'm a lot more experienced on a power hammer than I am with a press. You know, also they move the metal differently. The press jumps right in and hits it in the core, which is why you'll see things kind of barrel out. If you took a piece of round bar, let's say 1.5 inches in diameter by 4 inches tall, and you stuck it under a press, it would trap the two ends, and you'd see it turn into a barrel shape. If you took it under a hammer, I mean, unless you're using like a huge hammer, it's going to tend to want to upset the ends before it upsets the center. Now, of course, obviously a bigger hammer is going to do it much more evenly. But anyway, it's a control thing. I have a lot more control. It actually keeps your steel cleaner, because as it's hammering, the scale is coming off where it gets trapped in a press. So I think you can get a much cleaner forging on a hammer if you're good with a hammer. Okay. And again, much quicker. So we're just going to go straight in and forge it on the edge here. Nice thing about a press, however, is that it's so much quieter.
Yeah, and you can kind of watch as you're doing those presses there. You can see the heat kind of sinking out wherever you're doing your hit. And I've seen a lot of times when people are drawing a billet on a power hammer, they're able to keep that heat in there for a lot longer just because it
Right.
punches it back in.
Yep, it's not a giant heat sink. So let's look at that, and you can see it's all pretty nice and clean, and it's all cooling at the same rate, which is a good sign. If you were to see a dark spot here while the rest is hot, that's a sign that you probably have a DLAM in there somewhere. So everything's the same color, which is always good to see. So I'm going to go ahead and just bias this thing and forge it back into a square, and then at that point, I mean, if you guys need to go, I mean, I have, I'll just do whatever. So.
Well, hopefully we can still get you kind of did it earlier, but maybe we can get a little bit of a slower, more detailed shop tour out of you. I know people always love to see those, kind of see what everybody's playing with. And for new people getting into this, they can kind of see what a shop setup looks like. Larry Never says he could stay all night. Oh, and the classes. Pete Moss wants to hear about those classes again.
Pete Moss. We got Pete Moss on here?
Yes, sir.
Is that the Pete Moss who came in and took a class from me? A couple classes.
Yep, 2 of them is what he says.
Yeah. Hey, Pete, how's it going, man? So I think there's a Damascus class on my schedule. I think there might be, there is one, but I think there's still maybe one spot left in the 3-day class, but I don't know, maybe not. It may have filled, but I'll be putting some more up. So basically I'm limiting all my classes to 4 students. You have to wear a mask. You have to make sure you're feeling good. I have a no-touch infrared thermometer to, measure your temperature when you're coming in. There's enough space for people to keep their distance. I have 2 people working out of each side of the forge. One nice thing about having an architectural size forge is it's really easy to get multiple students on either side and have everything work. And then I've got 4 grinders in here, and everybody's able to get in, and of course you're wearing your PPE anyway when you're in here grinding. So and then I'm still hoarse from last weekend because I'm yelling through my respirator and everything at everybody, and so it gives me an opportunity to yell at people and pretend I'm having fun. So okay, let's see. All right. Okay. Oh, that handle's about to fall off. All right.
Joe Elliott says that he might wait until after Corona to come take your class because he was really hoping to do some kissing.
Who, Pete?
Joe Elliott.
Joe Elliott. Well, our beards might get tangled. So this puppy has decided that my beard is her favorite thing about me, and she still has those talons for claws. See, there's the problem with the press. This press is like 29 tons, but it it starts to cool down, and you could probably hear it straining more. And if you come up and look, you'll see that I'm probably about 7/8 down here and maybe an inch up here, and so it's gone ahead and made a taper out of it. I said I was going to bias it, but I guess I lied because I totally forgot to. But I'm going to call that good. This is where I'm going to stop for the night, and I'll come back to this later when I have some time. And let's go ahead and just shut down the forge. So another thing I like to do, I've got this rake that I made. Everybody, if anybody's ever had a cold forge, you know what a forge rake is. But in my case, I use it to just, in case anything kind of decided to kind of glue itself together in there, I just go into the forge and kind of give it a rake. Actually, I usually turn it off first. I don't know why I'm doing that to myself. And what that does is it kind of tells me if there's areas that I need to replace is part of it. And then it also just makes it nice and even so that when I come in the next day, I know, if anything needs attention. And that's usually if I've been doing a bunch of forge welding. Here we go. So I hope that was, as far as the forge welding goes, I hope it was somewhat informative. I hope it was helpful. Hope it was interesting. Yeah. Anybody have anything to say or ask or?
That was great, David.
Yeah.
We really enjoyed it, buddy.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot, Dave.
I got a question, David.
Yeah.
Your preheating outside the forge seems to kind of go against everything that I've heard about reducing atmosphere and oxygen and stuff off of the welds and stuff. So you got in, yeah, could you enlighten us about that a little bit? Obviously it works.
Well, on the outside of your billet, it's not a concern as far as I'm concerned, as far as as you can come in here if you want. As far as I know, let me just return that. I don't think getting it on the outside of your billet is a problem. I think it's, in between the layers that you really need to be concerned about. And so by doing that, you're actually keeping, let's see. So by heating it slowly, you're not allowing it to really buckle up on you or anything to where it would introduce scale to the areas that matter. Does that make sense? Does that sort of address what you're saying?
No, I mean, that makes sense. Yeah, I just have never seen that before.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, if Flux got in between your layers, that wouldn't be good, right? So it's the same kind of thing. I mean, it's a jacket, right? So but the difference is you're just not adding that jacket, and by having it in front of the forge, you're getting that heat into the core without ever bringing it above the temperature where it really starts to oxidize and scale on you and everything.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think some people might have come in a little later. Can we get another flyby of those knives sitting in front of you for anybody who might have missed it earlier?
Yeah, you want to do a little flyby here? I got my cameraman over here. I'm going to take a little sip of some liquid here. Tonight's demonstration is brought to you by Dragon's Head Cider. Try the Manchurian. It's one of my favorites. So that's for a commission. A very nice woman commissioned 7 santokus for her employees. I kind of want to call them the 7 Samurai for some reason. Anybody remember that movie?
Oh, yeah.
That was an awesome movie.
I think they did a remake too, didn't they?
Probably. But the original Kurosawa was the best, I think.
Yeah, hard to beat that. And I think it had Toshiro Mifune was
Toshiro Mifune, man. He was totally in there. Absolutely.
We did have one question about how you're setting the handles in those wah.
Oh, how am I? Oh, yeah. Sorry. I thought, I gotcha. I thought there was something specific to it. So I burn them in. It would have, you know what, it's funny. I thought about saving one to do, but I needed to have them all done. So now they're at their last stages. I need to sharpen them and box them up. And that's pretty much it. But, so what I do is, let's find a good example here. This, I suppose, is as good as any. All right. So it's not quite as obvious. Can you see that well? Here, let's go over here. Maybe the light's a little better. All right. How's that? You see that? So, so you'll notice there's a wider portion of the blade here, and then it tapers away in both directions. And so that thick spot, rather, wants to be buried by even up to 1/8 of an inch inside of the handle to allow for a good tight fit and expansion and contraction traditionally. And they would always handle them using something like beeswax, or I think there was some other, I think something mixed with they used something that was mixed with like fine straw fibers or something like that. And it might have just been beeswax, but anyway, the design is meant to be driven in like a wedge. And so you have a taper going this way and you have a taper going this way. And so if you've ever seen any videos of like these master handle makers, because you know everybody has their specialty traditionally in Japan, they'd have like a little charcoal, kind of like a brazier, and you'd have all these knives around it, and the tangs would be setting in there, and the guy would pick it up with a towel wrapped around the knife, and he'd burn the handle onto the tang, and then he'd hold it up by the handle and hit the back of the handle, and it would suck the knife right up into it, and then he'd just set it aside. Now, whether he then took it apart again and put some sort of wax in there, or whether I didn't see in the one video I've seen of it, I don't know if he went back and did something or if that was it, but it was meant to be a super strong connection. And so I figured, you know, the only thing I can do to improve on that is to use modern adhesives. So so if you look, so I've been making my own wall handles. Those are all purchased handles. But here, for example, is one. It's a half octagon style, and I've got bocote and beef wood with a vulcanized paper spacer, just to kind of spice it up a little because we like it spicy. And so I mill out my ferrules. I mill a slot in the front and a hole in the back. And I don't know if I have any in. I think I have some paring knife handles I'm working on. So basically what I do, I know this is going beyond your question, but I thought it might be interesting. So I've got this block with a hole milled in it and a slot here. And then I've got this block with a hole. And then I take a dowel and that goes in there. And that goes in there. And then I glue it up. I orient my slot so that it is in line with this slot. And then once it's all done, I just come in and I heat my tang up and I rough it out. And if it's, depending on the tang, sometimes I'll do it completely burned in. And then I also go back and kind of grind off all the schmutz that comes up, because it'll give you this like heavy resinous kind of thing. But I've made my own brooches, but I actually picked this up from Daniel at Epicurean Edge, and it's just this vicious little tool, which is excellent for cleaning out the slot for the tang. And so if you get some of the crud that builds up in there, maybe some resin from the wood or whatever that kind of lingers, you can get in there and kind of knock some of that stuff out. But the thing to remember about epoxy is that it's a filler. You know, it's designed to be a filler as well as an adhesive, and some of that dust, and it's not going to hurt anything. I mean, if you put, and I've done some testing on it, and I'm going to tell you, it's incredibly tough stuff, you know, and um, oil and wax, of course, are a different story, but any of that, like, and that's why some of the more resinous stuff might be good to get out of there, but some of the fluff that stays in there, that's no big deal. But I don't know. Oh, okay. So this is my Black Fox. It's a pretty sweet machine. He used to make them in Walla Walla, but I think he moved to Coeur d'Alene or Idaho Falls or something like that. And it's really great. It has the 90-degree tilting feature, just like the TW90, but it's not a TW90, you know. But it is a locally made machine, and it's great. He's got a built-in VFD. It's reversible. I keep the reversible switch taped up because I don't want somebody throwing it into reverse when they're in the middle of grinding and they go to turn it off. And then I've got a couple of fear grinders over here. These are great. Jose makes these down in Gresham. He's got awesome customer service, and they're, you know, I mean, the Black Fox is a much more expensive machine. I've got some different attachments for that, which I don't have for theirs. One thing I want to point out here, you notice my guide wheels, the top and bottom wheels are rubber. I've got the 2-inch and the 4-inch, or is it 4? Am I just imagining that? That's bigger, looks bigger than 4. It's a 5-inch wheel. So these are crazy helpful. I use these all the time, and I think every machine should have something like this, at least as an option. It is incredibly useful, because I mean, I really do use these a lot. In fact, since I have these, I'm not pulling off my serrated wheels as often as I used to and hooking them up. Although for doing my handles, I definitely use the serrated wheels. So anyway, this is a much more basic machine. It's really great. I gotta say though, I'm not crazy about the digital VFD. It works well enough, but it has this high-pitched whine, and I've got tinnitus, and tinnitus and the high-pitched whines coming out of a machine, you know, are no fun. This is another one from Jose. Again, really great machine. And then this is my first machine, is this Bader, and it's my fastest machine, and probably it's maybe the most powerful just because of the way it's wired. But man, you can really put some weight on that thing, and it just hogs off material, and it moves really fast. So yeah, I've got these 3 machines in here, or 4 machines, excuse me. I got my, you know, all my participation trophies hanging on the wall. And I mean, I try to keep it pretty tidy. Now, what you're not seeing is I have an office upstairs that's about the same size as this room. It's pretty big. And I've got, you know, for doing, you know, my sharpening and leather work and marking, and I've got a lathe up there that I don't really use that often. In fact, I haven't used it in a really long time. My jewelry bench is up there. So like my little stuff, and then I've got downstairs, I've got a basement storage that has a bunch of stuff in it. And then I also have yard space across the bridge that's got a bunch of others, including my power hammer, which is sitting in a storage container. So yeah, what else do you want to know?
Rochelle had a question about where do you buy your wah handles from?
I could tell you, but then I'd have to kill you. You can get a hold.
You'd have to kill Rochelle, not me.
I
That
know.
sounds like a tough task.
I know. I wouldn't even want to try it. Don't beat me up, please. All right. So I get them. I get them through Epicurean Edge. I call up over there and see what they've got. I actually I don't know how many he wants to really sell anymore because they're getting really hard to find. There used to be something like 300 wah handle makers in Japan, and now I think it's down to 8, and they're all back ordered for years. So yeah, so it's pretty serious. That's why I'm trying to get into making my own. Although they're not as cost effective, I can charge more for my knives when I make my own handles. So there's that. But that just means more time. And since I've gotten my mill, I'm able to do that sort of thing much more efficiently. I was doing them on a drill press and using files, and oh God, it was a total pain in the ass. But now it's a different story. I can make them somewhat efficiently. And I still don't want to, get into the wah handle making business, but
Blacksmith, not a woodworker, right?
Yeah, something like that. So yeah.
Awesome. Any more questions from the audience before we start to wrap this up?
Oh yeah.
Joe Elliott's wondering if that hammer you're talking about is that 50-pound little giant.
Who?
Joe Elliott. Wondering if.
Oh yeah, it's my 50-pound little giant. Silas has the air hammer that I used to have. It belongs to Mr. Maddox now.
And another question is, are you taking any? Do you take custom orders? You looking for customers?
Yeah, I take custom orders. Yeah, absolutely. Always open to that. Gotten some pretty good commissions in the last year or so, and I'm actually just trying to work off. I think I have 3 more to wrap up, and then I'm gonna be seeking them out. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody for coming to our third Knife Maker's Corner digital demonstration. Thank you, David Tuthill, for showing us the ins and outs of some Damascus making and all the cool little tricks and toys in your shop.